Authority members, Raymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Brazian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Quintero.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the April 20th, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, April 15, 2010 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Next, please.
Next is approval of minutes.
So moved. I might mention that on March 2nd minutes, Mrs. Friedman and Mr. Quintero were absent, so let you know.
All right, noting those abstentions. May we have a roll call on the minutes, please?
Authority members, Raymond.
Yes.
Friedman.
Yes.
Mincy.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Brazian.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Chairman Quintero.
Yes. Next.
Next is oral communications. There was a card submitted. Discussion is limited. Time is not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Housing Authority may question or respond to speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for an investigation and a report.
Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon, Mr. Quintero, members of the Housing Authority, and city staff. My name is Herbert Milano. Next month, close to a month, in the month of June, we'll have basically the 2-year milestone since the request was made by the City Council to the staff to come back with the quality of life indicators. And as you all know, this thing has been postponed for a fairly long time as you try to assess what the best reporting is to assess the situation in Glendale. Among the things that are the areas that are under the purview of the Housing Authority is low-income housing, an evaluation of the status of the quality of life. And I want to bring up and clarify a couple of things concerning what I have seen and what I know about the areas of Glendale of which has been my concern for a long time. One of the things that I do often by coming here before you is to sort of like serve as a reminder of the policies that have been in place or the studies that have been made with regard to the objectives that the Housing Authority and the City Council has had. Let me give you an example of that. In 2001, we had a Blue Ribbon Panel Committee, of which Mr. Quintero was a member. And in this particular report created by this committee, Blue Ribbon Panel assessed the significant need of parkland. And everyone in this panel was pretty much in agreement with the significant need of addressing the shortage of parkland. So I would imagine that any governmental body looking at that report will say, here are the plans that we should put in place in order to assess that inequity. Now, for many years, I've heard the very same excuse. We can't build adequate parkland because we have to move people out of their homes. But there has always been opportunities that were lost. And as you know, I covered the situation of the most recent one having to do with the where Whole Foods is. We lost that particular lot. We lost the opportunities just across the street with regard to the Fashion Center, which was also going to be allocated for parkland. We lost other opportunities in the center of downtown as well. But we also have some fairly significant and large parking areas, some of them two acres, that under creative thinking, you could basically allow for the creation of subterranean parking and parkland on top. And I can basically name many of the sites inside Glendale that are perfectly suitable to provide that kind of parkland, but it does require funds, and it does require capital investment, and it requires foresight. But I think it's doable. You don't have to move people out of their homes, because I think that there's sufficient creativity for us to be able to create the adequate parkland. But you have other documents. You have the recreational planning areas that give you a report on the status of parkland by areas. And there are some areas, like Recreational Planning Area 10, that has had no improvement in 30 years. Yet, you approve additional housing for that area, and it gets more and more dense. It's not that I'm opposed to construction. It's that I want to encourage you to say, look, if we're going to increase the population by another 500 residents in this deficient area, that you make some type of capital improvement allocation to say we're going to take care of the needs of that particular planning area. I'm not here to be contentious for the purpose of being contentious. I just simply bring the very same documents that your own planning department uses and the very same reports that you yourselves have been part of, that you all agreed that needed to be done. But somehow we tend to forget those plans. We don't come back to review them. And that's where the issue is. You know, with regard to residential and my, let's say, an investment that I made, whatever, 23, 25 years ago, you know, the usual building that was built in Southern Glendale was an 8-unit building. Hundreds of them were built. The problem is not that the buildings were made or that there's insufficient parking there, parking within the building itself, or sufficient green space. The problem is that there was no allocation made for sufficient parkland to address the needs of those residents. That's the problem. Now I understand why I needed to drive 2.5 miles to Glen Oaks Park, and I got tons of pictures that I can show Mr. Weaver. That's where I took my kids, so they could have a safe place in a nice residential area where they could play. I thought that was the norm until I basically found out how Glendale's funding works and how capital improvements is generally ignored and takes the second, they put into the back burner as other more present and urgent financial needs take place. And that's why I have an issue with regard to the way the funding has been made primarily towards the issues of salary and benefits that have been above and beyond our ability to pay for. And so we reduce our capital investment to the areas that need it. So, I don't particularly like the idea of someone naming this whole issue having to do with Soviet-style housing. It's unnecessarily contentious, and yet you're in a housing authority where your objective is to create very large units that is government subsidized. So if you want to talk about Soviet-style housing, that's more Soviet-style housing than individuals coming to invest independently. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, please.
On the business agenda before you at 6A is Director of Community Redevelopment and Housing regarding affordable home ownership project to be located at 624 to 630 Geneva Street. At 6A1 is a motion approving a 6-month extension through December 31, 2010 to the exclusive negotiating agreement between the Glendale Housing Authority and the San Gabriel Valley Habitat for Humanity, Inc. in preparation for possible development of the home ownership project.
Mr. Strawberry.
Yes, I'll go to Mike Fortney, Housing Project Manager for the staff report. Mike?
Good afternoon, Housing Authority Board. I'm Mike Fortney, the Housing Project Manager. The request is to extend the E&A that we have with Habitat for Humanity for the 5-unit project at 624 through 630 Geneva Street for an additional 6 months. The current E&A doesn't expire until the end of June, but we know now that Habitat's going to need an additional 6 months up to December of this year to raise the funds to break ground. So rather than delay the request for the extension of the E&A, we're just bringing it to you now. So the E&A requires that they raise $400,000 in order to break ground on the project. And so far they've raised $200,000. So they're getting there, but they still have some work to do. And I should mention, Sonia Yates, the Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity, is here in the audience and available for questions. One thing that they are also asking, if you recall, the whole site isn't going to be used for the 5 units for Habitat. The northerly 42 feet of the site, which we are doing a lot line adjustment for, that is planned for a community garden. Habitat is asking that 42 feet be reserved so that they can use that during construction. And then they would be able to call on their pool of volunteers to help establish the community garden once the 5 units is constructed. So that is one request that they have made. So, but the action before you now is just the extension of the E&A for an additional 6 months.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Mr. Draymond.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a little more about how they will go about establishing a community garden.
Okay. I think probably Sonia Yates would probably be the best answer to that. Again, Sonia is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity.
Good afternoon to all of you. We're not going to be the ones designing or establishing the community gardens, but we do have volunteer labor and people who are very excited about the concept of community gardens. And I even shared with Mike and Peter that if in the interim period, should you approve the extension, our volunteers could be deployed to assist with the building of community gardens in other locations. We would be happy also to provide our labor pool for that purpose.
Very good. Thank you for answering the question so directly.
Anything
How
else?
was that, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
Do you make comment?
Yeah, before you make the motion, I was thinking the same thing. I'd love to have the community garden move forward, but I think they're going to need a staging area for the construction. However, it seems to me we could continue to move forward on the design and have it ready to go so that once the housing's built and the volunteer force and whatever other the other nonprofit we're associated with, maybe they can combine their efforts and get it done quickly.
I'll move 6A1. Second.
Okay, any other comments? Roll call.
Authority members Draymond.
Yes.
Friedman.
Yes.
Mincy.
Here. Yes.
Thank you. Najarian.
Yes.
Brazian.
Yes.
Weaver.
Here. Aye.
Thank you. Chairman Quintero.
Yes. Next, please.
Are there any authority member or staff comments?
I hear none.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
We are adjourned.
Okay, everyone ready for the